Peter, from Bosom Buddies to Newhart to Honey, I Shrunk the Kids to Girls, which is your latest on HBO.
Yeah.
You've had a variety of acting roles. I'm forgetting dozens of other things in Broadway.
Me too.
Now the new challenge, Yogi Berra in Bronx Bombers on Broadway.
Yeah. Can't
How
be
do you
done.
take on that challenge?
It's not possible.
Of course it's possible.
Huge
You're going to do it.
I'm going to do it. Playing an iconic character is sometimes there's a pitfall there before you even start, which is it can't be done. So I make the joke, I get it out of the way. It's a little superstition, but it can be done. There's a fantastic script that's been developed and is continuing to be developed, and we go into rehearsal shortly. We're opening this thing in previews in New York on January 10th. I played Red Auerbach a couple of years ago, less than 2 years ago, in another play written by Eric Simonson.
Magic and Bird.
In Magic Bird. And I saw a brief videotape of Red, and then I looked at a little YouTube stuff, which is, sometimes perilous. And I suddenly had not a mimics or an impressionist sort of take on him. I had a sense of, the grit of the guy. And I've taken something like that and just looking at Yogi and the way his speech accelerates at the end of a sentence. These little things, you want to give just a flavor of the way the man walks and talks. I actually walk like the guy. Anyway, I go through my life trying not to be given away as a guy who walks like Yogi Berra, sort of on his tiptoes, athletic, but, low to the ground, very graceful. Mm-hmm. So these are things from the actors, classroom. We steal what we need, just enough to give a strong suggestion of the man, and then let the text and the story do the rest.
But maybe the difference with Auerbach and Yogi is, I believe you probably never met Auerbach, whereas you have met Yogi.
I have.
And what was that like?
My life is fuller and richer now.
Soaking up nuances, mannerisms at that time?
Without getting too cosmic on this particular subject, getting to meet Yogi Berra and spend a little time with him. They have this thing out at Yogi's Museum in Montclair State University where they bring people in, do a little fundraising, and you watch a World Series game with Yogi and Carmen. Mm-hmm. And there's a little theater with a huge screen, and we watched Game 2, the Red Sox Cardinals.
Wow.
And I sat with Yogi, and I had burgers and hot dogs with Yogi. I asked him a few questions, but mostly just kind of commiserated the way I would with an older Italian uncle back in the day. All the Italians in the Scolari family are Jersey-based. Patterson, Nutley, Montclair, in fact, Glen Rock, and Hackensack, and all these other Indian names. And I had a very warm welcome in Yogi, incredible smile, a guy who looks kind of into your soul when if you look away and look back, you realize he's looking right down the barrel at you. That's valuable because there's a sort of osmosis that goes on, and it's a very rare opportunity to actually meet somebody who is iconic at that level, on that order of being part of American culture for 50 years. Not just baseball, because everybody knows Yogi Berra in some way, whether they know it or not. And they know about the class of the guy and the warmth of the guy and the humor of the guy. So I felt very lucky to steal moments of time with him that I think will be able to carry something from that. I can't tell you what. Be able to carry something from actually spending a couple of hours with him.
I've had the opportunity to visit with Yogi a bunch of times and interview him, and he's such a gentleman, and I've enjoyed those visits. Did he leave you with any impression? Because the last time we were there doing our show, he just was kind of suddenly fixated a little bit on Twitter, which I thought was the coolest thing. We were talking a little bit about Twitter, and we were talking about how, Yogi, it'd be great if you were ever on Twitter. He also wanted to talk about Eduardo Nunez. Not Jeter that day, not CC Sabathia, but Eduardo Nunez. And just very grandfatherly. And I remember driving home that day feeling so fortunate that I had had those experiences with him. Did you have any kind of moment like that, something that really resonated?
We talked about horseshoe pitching.
And your dad was a champion.
My dad was junior champion of the world in 1939. He was New Jersey state champion, New England champion, retired at the age of 17, you know, with all kinds of... He's in the New Jersey Horseshoe Pitching Hall of Fame, and I think Yogi took to this. Carmen made it very clear that Yogi was a pretty good horseshoe pitcher, which I don't doubt. I don't doubt. And my dad, who's gone many years now, but my dad and Yogi were born within about... lived, born within maybe 3-4 months of each other in 1925. I connected with him and shared that with him, and I can't tell you exactly why, except I kind of, you talk about family and a father and a grandfather, and this aspect of his character, I think, is a leading component. I mean, it's who and what he is. He's a family man. Spent some time talking to Larry Jr., and connected in that way. I mean, it's not necessarily the case that because I have a vowel at the end of my name, we all get together and know each other and are able to connect, but that it just so happens that that was the case, and I take that with me too.
Before you end up playing alongside Tom Hanks in Bosom Buddies, you thought you might be on the same field as Thurman Munson. You had a nice little high school career going yourself, didn't you? But then an injury struck.
You know, my dad was a superb two-time All-American baseball player for Doc Young out of Drew University in Madison. And I had some of my father's ability as a baseball player. But fortunately, I was injured, you know, early on after making the high school baseball team as a freshman. And under Carl Weehee, this was a guy out in Westchester County, was quite a superior baseball coach and a disciplinarian back in the, this was back in 1970. But I tore a tendon, and then I broke my elbow wrestling and didn't know it, and wrestled for 2 more weeks, and in a very short while managed to do enough harm to myself, you know, an athletic injury that any consideration of a life as a professional athlete was long gone, which was a really, you know, wonderful thing, because my dad had had hopes that I would become a lawyer. The universe had another plan for me, of course, if the universe makes any plans for us at all, and that was that I would become an actor and worship at that altar of doing impossibly creative things and things that you can't really prepare for. This is the actor's life.
Now, we've talked about Barra, but in the acting world, there's an iconic figure that you will always be connected with. Now, if Wikipedia is to be believed, there were 37 episodes of Bosom Buddies.
I'm sure that's correct.
You and Tom Hanks, that show found its niche in TV history. Great chemistry between the two of you. It also ends up being a launching pad for Tom Hanks, who goes on to the...
I'm not sure it was a launching pad for Tom, to be honest with you.
Not a launching pad?
Well, you know, it was a great
beginning. I guess I should have said a beginning.
It was a beginning, yeah. I mean, a couple of years went by, and it was... We would, you know, check in with each other periodically, and I'd be back and forth to New York. And we ran into each other in an audition for a movie. And I came out after auditioning for Ronnie Howard and Brian Grazer, his associate. They were just starting out their film careers. And I saw Tom, and I said, which role are you going in for? I said, I went in for the brother. He says, no, I'm going in for the guy. It was Splash. I didn't book it. John Candy did. And Tom booked it. That, some would say, was the real launching pad for Tom in terms of feature films. But even that did not predict or presage what he would be able to accomplish a few years later. It would be another 4 or 5 years before he would do like Nothing in Common, and then Big. Big was this transitional thing.
Sure.
He doesn't need me to tell this story. I don't know why I'm going on, but our friendship is old.
That's what I was going to say. Is
sand.
You were in Lucky Guy together on Broadway.
We were on Broadway last year together.
I had the opportunity to meet Scolari. He had been in press boxes.
Did
so
you?
I got the chance to meet him. And
wow, he was must have been an interesting
guy, tough guy. But what I wanted to say was how, and you and Tom have done other projects, how did you maintain that friendship? Because I bet you there are people who you appear with and you acted with 30 years ago, you've never had another word with, but the two of you have, that connection has stayed.
Yeah. I think that was always in the cards. There was a connection we had in the first 3 days of working together that a bond. And then we went through things together, I shouldn't get too personal about it because he'll have me killed.
Well, a good reporter has to follow up that question. But how personal and how in-depth were these things?
Well, we had marriages, begin and end, children born. I was around when Colin Hanks was a little blonde-haired, tousled boy, who could be entertained with the lamest magic tricks and juggling that I would do, which he shared with me last year. He remembers me juggling clubs in the front yard of their home in Studio City when Tom was with his first wife. There have been difficult times for both of us, but speaking only for myself, where Tom stepped in and made a real difference and shepherded me through some difficult periods in my life. So you don't forget that stuff. It speaks to his character, which, there's the whole Tom Terrific aspect of his career, which is not a unfounded, ungrounded sort of way to characterize him, but it doesn't tell the whole story. This is a deep guy, and a guy with a profoundly large sense of humor. So there are very few people who can or will lovingly be able to tease me mercilessly, for both of those things to be in place. When we did Lucky Guy on Broadway here, just this year actually, earlier this year, there were times in rehearsal when we would start screwing around and you could see all the other actors kind of home. It's the bosom buddies. Say, the bosom buddies are screwing around. And that's not something we go after. It's not something we try and, hey, we're going to do some of our, banter and our fooling around, but it happened because that's Peter and Tom. That's the truth. There were no bosom buddies. It was Peter and Tom getting through that.
You used the phrase before, in the cards, which is a nice segue. We always end these interviews by opening a pack of baseball cards. Whoever gets the best card gets to keep both packs. So this could be an early Christmas present for you.
Did you see that he handed me the pack, though? But there's no way he could have possibly known.
I didn't doctor the cards. And no way. I would
we've
never do
never
that to a guest. I would never do that. I'm off to a slow start here. All right, I got Heath Bell. He was a decent reliever. I got Justin Upton, Johnny Cueto, Josh Reddick.
Fine professional athletes.
Wade Miley, Aramis Ramirez, Matt Holliday.
Matt Holliday, okay.
Matt Holliday might be my best. What do you got?
You're done.
What do you have?
You're done.
He's got Ricky Henderson.
It's over.
He's got a Hall of Famer. You are the winner. Take both packs. Merry Christmas.
And to you.
Peter, thanks for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.